Have you ever stopped to wonder if the mark of the beast is actually a chip? Or if it's already being engraved in you, every day, without you even realizing it? What if the end isn't something distant, but something that's already begun? In today's video, you'll hear the story of Tyler Grant, who died for 6 minutes, and what Jesus revealed to him about the mark of the beast will shock you. Like, subscribe to the channel, and comment on which city you're watching from, so this message reaches as many people as possible. My name is Tyler Grant. I'm 32 years old. I live in Austin, Texas, and if you'd seen me before that day, you'd have thought I was an ordinary guy. I worked in digital marketing, had a nice apartment, a cool car, and about 30,000 Instagram followers. My time was completely divided between meetings, the gym, and motivational reels about productivity. But inside, I was on the verge of a breakdown. On the night of July 8, 2025, after weeks of sleeplessness, increasingly severe anxiety attacks, and an absurd amount of pressure at work, I decided to double the dose of medication to calm my mind. I just wanted to rest. I just wanted to silence the noise in my head. But what happened next was anything but rest. I remember lying on the couch, phone in hand, watching a video of a guy talking about abundance consciousness. When my fingers started tingling, I thought it was just the medicine kicking in, but within seconds, my chest tightened. I tried to get up. I couldn't. My body weighed a ton. My phone fell from my hand and everything went black. The noise of the TV grew distant, as if someone had turned down the volume of reality. And then there was a sound, a high-pitched frequency, like a siren inside my mind. It was the last thing I heard before everything disappears. But what came next wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something I never imagined possible. I found myself outside my body. The room was the same, but everything seemed dead, like an empty stage. I looked down and saw myself, motionless, pale-faced, mouth half open. My eyes were half open, staring at the ceiling. A trickle of blood dripped from my nose. The image should have frightened me, but what I felt was a strange indifference. That wasn't me anymore. Then I felt a force pulling me upward. It was gentle, but undeniable, as if I were being sucked up by something invisible. I passed through the ceiling as if it weren't there, and above all, silence. Absolute silence. A silence that carried weight. The absence of sound was so intense that it made me forget that the world had ever had noise. Then, a point of light, as if a star had been lit in the midst of liquid darkness. It approached. It was alive. It throbbed. And suddenly, this light took shape. Era a man in white, but his face was not visible. Still, my spirit knew who it was. It was Jesus. There was no way to explain it, but my entire being recognized that presence. It was as if I had returned to where I came from, a place my soul had always known existed, but my modern, logical, anxious mind had never accepted. And then, he spoke, not with his mouth, but inside me. Tyler, it's time to see. I wanted to ask what, but before I could think of anything, the reality around me tore apart, and what he showed me next completely changed the meaning of the word brand. When Jesus said, "And it's time to see," I felt like I'd been swallowed by a wave, not of water, but of real life. I was no longer in that silent darkness. Suddenly, I was above the earth, seeing everything from an impossible place, as if floating in a space between dimensions. But I wasn't alone. His presence was still with me, invisible yet tangible, as if my soul were holding his hand, even without a body. And then, he showed me people, billions. I saw crowds walking through the cities. It was as if the rooftops had disappeared, and I could see inside homes, shops, and offices. I saw people having family dinners, each with their eyes glued to their own screen. I saw teenagers with headphones crying alone in the dark. I saw men in suits yelling into phones while biting their nails. I saw packed churches and empty souls. And it was at that moment that I started to see the marks. On the forehead and on the hands. They weren't tattoos, nor codes, nor chips. They were spiritual stains, almost like invisible, glowing embers embedded in the skin of the soul. Most people had these marks. Some only on their foreheads, others only on their hands, many on both. And I asked myself, as if shouting in my mind, "What is this? Is this the mark of the beast?" And Jesus answered, not with a voice, but with an absolute knowledge that exploded within me. This is the mark the world bears, and it didn't start now. It started with the choices we make. I saw a middle-aged man lying on the couch, a glass of whiskey in his hand, laughing at some stupid video on the internet. He had the mark on his forehead. Jesus made me understand. His mind is sealed by the world's system. He thinks as the world thinks. He feels as the world feels. He is distracted, empty, blind. The mark is already there. I saw a beautiful, successful woman taking selfies in a luxury car. The brand was in her hand. Jesus revealed to me, her actions are a reflection of her ego worship. What she does is for herself, for the world, for applause. Her hand works for a false god herself. With each scene, the revelation hit me harder than any truth I had ever known. The mark of the beast wasn't something that would be forcibly imposed. It was something people were already choosing and asking for. I thought, but what about the chip? What about the technology? What about the Antichrist? Jesus answered before I finished the question. The chip will only be the final stamp, the seal of something that has already been delivered. Technology is only the mirror. The true throne is in the heart. And then I saw millions of people smiling as they received a kind of digital identity. It was as if they were being recognized by the world system, integrated, accepted. None of them were being forced. They were relieved, happy, because that moment I was just confirming a loyalty they already had within themselves. The mark on the forehead was about who they trusted to form their worldview. The mark on the hand was about who they were serving with their life, their work, their energy, and almost all of them were already sealed. And it was then that, for the first time, I felt a deep fear. The fear that gripped me at that moment wasn't like the fear of a thief or a nightmare. It was existential, deep, an anguish that pierced my soul like a blade. Because Jesus wasn't just showing me the world. He was showing me my reflection. I saw myself, Tyler, before I died, in my room, with headphones on, playing video games while the church service I was attending was playing in the background on the TV. I saw my fingers sliding across my phone screen, scrolling through videos of people I didn't even know, while I ignored my mother's messages asking me to visit my sick father. I saw my inane conversations, my likes on self-help quotes, my sarcastic comments on posts from people trying to talk about God. And there it was, my forehead, marked, in my hand, marked. The brand was not imposed. It was chosen, repeated, fed, and the most scary, I thought I was free. Jesus made me understand that the worship of the system doesn't happen in a satanic temple filled with red candles. It happens in the silence of empty routines, in lukewarm hearts, in daily decisions that place the self at the center of everything. And then, he revealed something to me that chilled my essence. Worship doesn't need words. It needs focus. It needs surrender. He showed me thousands of people, kneeling, but not before an altar, kneeling in front of screens, in front of bank accounts, in front of numbers, in front of image, influence, comfort. I saw a young man saying, "I don't believe in any end-time stuff," while booking a trip to Bali on his cell phone. But in his spirit, Jesus showed me, he had already surrendered. He had already trusted the world's system. He had already made the most tragic exchange of all, his soul for comfort. And then Jesus showed me what he called the altar of distraction. It was like an invisible mountain made of notifications, series, updates, headlines, promotions. It was beautiful, bright, pulsating. Millions were there, some dancing, others just lying there, mesmerized. And from his eyes flowed tears they didn't even realize they were crying. They were empty, and they didn't know it. And then I saw something that chilled me to the core. People with Bibles in their hands, and marks on their foreheads. Shepherds with rehearsed smiles, and marks on their hands. Jesus made me understand that appearance does not seal anyone. It is the direction of the heart that marks the soul. I saw young people with Christian t-shirts, but with their minds full of anger, pride, and vanity. I saw adults who posted verses, but lived seeking approval from the world, doping themselves with praise, living for performance. The mark is not visible to human eyes, but to God's eyes. It is burning, and Jesus whispered within me, with a sadness that seemed to weigh the universe. They call me Lord, but they do not know me. They say they love me, but they worship another God. themselves. At that moment, I wanted to scream, I wanted to run. I wanted to run away from the truth. But the truth was already inside me. I was marked too. That revelation tore me apart. The feeling was as if my soul was being placed before a mirror that didn't show the face, but the truth. And the truth hurt. Jesus did not condemn me, but his presence was so pure, so true, that everything in me that was false disintegrated. I saw the Tyler I never wanted to face, the Tyler who only prayed when he was afraid, the Tyler who said I'm spiritual, not religious, to avoid any true surrender, the Tyler who would post a compliment on the car and at the same time yell profanities in traffic, the Tyler who never really bent the knee, who never handed over control. My mind was scarred, my hand was scarred, my heart divided, and Jesus, with a look of infinite mercy, made me understand there is no such thing as half a seal, or we belong to the world, or we belong to him. And then something changed. The vision shifted again, and Jesus led me to see those who were his. They were so different, but not in the outward way. They looked like anyone you would pass on the street, but there was something in their eyes, a peace, a firmness, a discreet but unmistakable light. I saw a janitor cleaning a hospital hallway, praying softly as he pushed the bucket. I saw an exhausted mother, with dark circles under her eyes, singing a hymn while bathing her disabled son. I saw a truck driver with the Bible open on the dashboard. I saw a lady in a wheelchair fasting and interceding for young people she didn't even know. And all of them, they didn't have the mark, not his body, not even in hand. Why? Their minds were sealed by the word, and their actions were for the glory of God. They also used cell phones. They also had bills to pay. They also felt fear, anxiety, sadness. But there was a difference. They were not guided by that. They were guided by faith, by delivery, by obedience. Jesus showed me that the Holy Spirit was his mark. Not a feeling, but a living presence that transforms thoughts and directs actions. These people were connected to heaven. While the world screamed, "Run," they waited. While the world said, "Produce more," they said, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." And then he said to me, "They will not be deceived, not because they are smarter, but because they already chose me today. Their decision has already been made." That's when I realized the real terror of the brand. The mark of the beast is not about a day in the future. It's about every little yes we give to the world, every day, with every click without thinking, to every idolatry disguised as ambition. Each trust more in finances than in divine provision, with every thought given over to fear instead of faith. It's an invisible cult, but eternity sees everything. And I, Tyler, had been part of this cult for years, without knowing it. After seeing the sealed and the marked, Jesus showed me something even more disturbing. One trial that was already taking place, but no one on earth seemed to notice. I imagined the final judgment as that cliché scene. Thrones, lightning, giant books being opened. But what I saw was much more subtle, and infinitely more frightening. It was as it was, everything was being recorded in real time. Every thought, every intention, every click, every choice. Not by angels with scrolls, but by something more alive. It was as if people's very souls wrote their story in invisible ink, and heaven read it clearly. I saw a woman open Instagram, see a friend's post, and, in fractions of a second, be taken by envy. She smiled, commented, "Beautiful as always." But inside, she wished she was her. On earth, nothing has changed. One more comment. In heaven, a recorded sentence, an inclination of the heart revealed. I saw a man watch a Christian video, get emotional, close his eyes and say amen. But 10 minutes later, he was back to watching porn as if nothing had happened. In the natural, a recovering believer. In the spiritual, a divided heart, about to be completely marked. Jesus made me understand something that pierced me like an arrow. The brand will not be imposed. It will be deserved. And then he took me to a place that looked like a hall of mirrors. But each mirror showed what was behind the human face. I saw worship leaders with pride burning in their chests. I saw Christian influencers who talked about God but lived for algorithms. I saw teenagers who posted verses but hated their parents. I saw business owners who said, "I'm blessed," but exploited their employees. And then, I saw myself, and I almost couldn't face myself. My mirror showed a man who thought he was good, balanced, modern, too intelligent for radical religions. But behind the veneer of self-image there was fear, pride, superficiality. There was a man marked by the idolatry of convenience, marked by distraction, marked by independence. I cried like I had never cried before, not out of shame, but for realize how far I was from him, even though I thought I was close. Jesus said to me, "It's not how much you do for me, that's how much you belong to me." And then I understood, judgment doesn't begin when you die. It's already happening now, right now, as you read this, with every choice, with every surrender, with every focus, you are being marked, or by him, or around the world. And the question that burned in my spirit was, how many people think they are saved, but are they already marked? The next vision Jesus showed me was what appeared to be the future, but with one disturbing detail, looked exactly like the present. No red skies, no robots patrolling the streets, no churches being burned in the public square. No, it was all normal, crowded shopping malls, people with headphones, children on playgrounds, vlogs, trends, news. But something was wrong there, very wrong. I saw people smiling as they put their hands on a kind of shiny digital terminal, like a scanner. I saw others receiving something on their wrists or foreheads, not a grotesque chip, but something more subtle, elegant, modern. It was called Citizen Integrity ID. The global government said it was the seal of trust. But heaven saw it as the end of a silent choice that had already been made long ago. Jesus made me see, they are not being fooled today. They have been trained for years, conditioned, programmed to desire that mark. She doesn't scare them, she reassures them. I saw a young woman smiling as she received the seal of protection. She hugged her grandmother and said, "Now we are safe, now we are connected." But spiritually, the two were being sealed, not for life, but for eternal separation. I saw churches closing their doors due to social inadequacy. I saw Christians being called inflexible, radical, rejectors of progress. And the most shocking thing, I saw Christians applauding this. They said, "We need balance. We will adapt, God understands. The important thing is to love, not to divide." And one by one, they entered the queue, in line with the brand. There were no soldiers, there was no threat, just comfort, and a promise that everything would be easier, with just one touch. But Jesus showed me their hearts. They were already marked before the queue, marked by choices, marked by priorities, marked by spiritual cowardice. It was then that I understood the deepest truth of that vision. The mark of the beast will not be a sudden event. It will be the culmination of a lifetime of subtle decisions that have placed the world system above the kingdom of God. And so, on that day, millions will accept with joy, without realizing that what they are receiving is not freedom, it's sealing, an eternity outside of his presence, signed with a smile. And it all started with small daily concessions, an apology here, a distraction there, a God understands instead of God reigns. And I was trembling inside, because I saw that if I hadn't died that day, before long, I would be in that line too. In the midst of all that darkness disguised as normality, Jesus showed me something that gave me hope for the first time since it all began. He said to me, in a voice that was not sound, but truth carved in light, "The world system marks, but I also seal." And then, as if the darkness were torn in half, I saw another people, discreet, silent, but shining. They were among all the others, in the same world, in the same cities, using the same cell phones. But there was something supernatural about them. I saw their foreheads, and there was no chip, tattoo, or hologram on them. But there was a soft glow, like living gold. It was the word of God sealed in his thoughts, not decorated, but recorded, because they lived by the truth. I saw your hands. They carried bags, drove, washed dishes, delivered pizzas, but they were marked by obedience, by resignation, for the service. Jesus made me see that his seal is not a code, it is a delivery. It is not received by ritual, it is received by surrender. These people were not perfect, but there was something about them that the world could not corrupt. They thirsted for God, hunger for justice, a love that was not for sale. And then I saw a scene that marked me forever. A young black man, in a ripped sweatshirt, sitting on a sidewalk with a broken guitar, softly singing an ancient hymn. No one stopped to listen, but in the spiritual world, angels surrounded him, because his mind was on God, and his hands did what they could for love. I saw a tired woman cleaning a public restroom in the wee hours of the morning, murmuring a prayer for a son who had gone astray. She was invisible to everyone, but heaven called her general. These people would refuse the final mark not out of fear, but because they had already been sealed by another kingdom. And then Jesus told me something that split my soul in two. The day the world offers its mark, there will be no more time to decide who you belong to, because the decision will have already been made in the previous days. In every choice, on every click, in every thought fed, in every life lived in worship of the true king or false comfort. That's when I understood, with pain and clarity, the war will not be between a chip and a cross. The war will be between two worships, the worship of the self or the worship of the Lamb. And the stamp has already started to be printed today. Jesus took me to one last vision, and this one was the most painful of all. I saw the separation happening, but not as an apocalyptic event with trumpets and fire in the sky. It was something much more subtle, much more silent, and therefore much more dangerous. I saw families being divided, parents who mocked their children's faith, children who ignored the pleas of Christian mothers, couples who slept in the same bed, but whose spirits belonged to opposing kingdoms. I saw people in the same church, singing the same hymns, raising their hands, but some were being sealed by the presence, and others marked by distraction. And the worst part, nobody noticed, because there was no sound. The separation made no noise. It happened behind the scenes of the soul, one step at a time, a concession here, an omission there. Jesus said to me, "Judgment will not come to divide. It will only reveal the division that is already happening now." And then I saw what he called the Great Silence, a moment when the voice of the Spirit would be ignored so many times, which would no longer echo, not for lack of love, but out of respect for human decision. It was as if whole hearts were saying, "Not now, Lord, later, just one more video, just one more relationship, just one more year to enjoy." And then, heaven respected their silence. Jesus showed me that it wasn't the devil who came to take away people's faith. It was they themselves who, day after day, were selling their adoration for crumbs, likes, status, pleasures, security, applause. All this was the altar of the new world. And the most terrible thing, most people thought everything was fine. They still said God in control. They still reposted verses. They still wished peace and light in the comments. But heaven saw their foreheads, your hands, and they were already burning with the mark of another Lord. And then Jesus spoke to me, directly, firm, but with tears in the tone. The separation is happening now, but there is still time. For some, just a little more. And in that moment, I realized something so real it took my breath away. There is no neutrality. There is no halfway house. Or are you being sealed by heaven, or it is already being marked by the world. And the time to decide it's not tomorrow. And now, after all I had seen, the marks, the seals, the silent separation, I was shattered. My soul trembled, not with human fear, but with a brutal awareness of eternity. It was as if the curtain had been pulled back from the backstage of the universe, and I was seeing everything that had always been there, but I never wanted to look at. Jesus did not accuse me, but his presence was like fire and balm at the same time. And then he did something that completely disarmed me. He showed me a cruise, but not like in movies or paintings. There was no glamour, no violin in the background. Had pain, silence, blood, and a loneliness so dense it felt like a hole in the fabric of the universe. I saw his body, torn apart. I saw the moment when the Father turned his face, and the Spirit made me understand something that broke all my modern arguments, all my excuses, all my religious games. The brand of the world is received by convenience. The seal of the Lamb was earned by sacrifice. It was at that moment that I understood the cost of my salvation. It wasn't about being nice. It wasn't about not making mistakes anymore. It was about to whom I belonged, to whom I gave my loyalty. And so Jesus said to me, "You need to go back, because millions are living as if they are safe, but they are sealing their doom every day." The sentence fell upon me like a thunder of mercy, sealing your doom every day. With every click lies, with every justification to live far from him. Each time they choose to trust the system, not the Savior. And then, Jesus placed his hand on my chest. It wasn't a gentle touch. It was like a ray of glory that passed through me completely. And when he did this, my mind was invaded by a holy weight, an emergency, a mission. Volte, Tyler, and tell them, the mark will not come as a surprise. It has already started. My soul cried out, but who will listen to me? I am not a pastor. I am not perfect. And then, for the first time, Jesus spoke with clear words within me. They don't need a pastor. They need someone who has seen, that you understand, and have the courage to tell. At that moment, the glory around him began to fade. I felt like I was being pulled back, as if eternity was closing in. And my spirit, I fought not to leave him. I cried, not with tears, but with a spiritual pain that cannot be described. How to leave the home you never knew you had, like waking up from a dream more real than life itself. But I knew it was necessary. It was urgent. I needed to tell. The return was like a tear in the fabric of peace, sweet and violent at the same time. It was like being spat out of eternity and back into a world without color, without smell, without truth. My soul, which had floated in light, was thrown back into a broken, limited, fragile body. I opened my eyes with a silent scream. The air burned my lungs. My limbs were trembling. The hospital lights hurt me like blades. Doctors shouted. Equipment beeped. One of them said, surprised, "He's back. The patient's back." But the sound was distant, as if the real world was no longer real to me. I didn't cry with relief. I cried with longing, share of the presence, from the home I touched and had to leave. I was informed after I was clinically dead for 6 minutes, after an accidental overdose of anti-anxiety medication. 6 minutes that, in heaven's time, seemed like an eternity. Or maybe eternity really began there. But the reason I came back was clear. Jesus gave me a mission. Tell them the brand is not what they think, and that's why I'm here. If you watched this video thinking I was going to show you images of the end of the world, tell you about beasts, governments, chips, or a new order, understand one thing. You are already inside the prophecy. She does not start with an international decree. It starts with a choice. Today, the mark will not be imposed. She will be embraced with joy by hearts that have already sold themselves to comfort, to control, to distraction. Those who trust today more in the system than in Salvador, more in the algorithm than in the word, more in logic itself than in faith. The worship of the beast is not a ceremony. It is the lifestyle where God is just a detail and the I is king. But there is still time. If you breathe, you can choose. It's not about fear. It's about belonging. Who owns your mind? Who do your hands belong to? What do you think in silence? What do you live for when no one is watching? These are the real spiritual tattoos. These are the invisible decisions that seal your spirit. And I beg you, don't wait for the day the world offers your brand, because when that day comes, it will only be confirming what you already carry. Choose now, choose today, or the brand will choose for you. If you enjoyed this beautiful spiritual testimony, please leave a like, comment, share your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.